capable of a puny human being like us. That is the function of a Muhammad or a Buddha. They come and life become an example of what our lives can become. And out of their immense capacity and kindness, we are grateful that they have shared their insights with us. So today we want to continue to move deeper and deeper into this subject. Now, we have already covered a lot of territory. We have covered a lot of ground in the prior 5 sessions. We've looked at the very notion of spirituality. We've looked at the concept of what constitutes one's ideal of what spirituality is, what we call your ishtah. Because each of us have an ideal of what constitutes spirituality. That ideal of what constitutes spirituality very often is based upon our own upbringing, our environment, the community in which we grew up in, and many other things, including our fantasies. And one of the most difficult things to do is to elevate our istah of what really constitutes authentic spiritual practice. To actually become capable of dropping a lot of long-held, cherished beliefs. And this is always the most difficult part of any spiritual journey. When we encounter these great teachers of the ancient art and science and secret of spiritual development, the most difficult part that we have is relinquishing our own clinging to our own concepts of how spiritual practice should go. I am reminded of a story told by one of the great mystics, Ravidas. And a seeker had came to Ravidas. Ravidas was a cobbler, made shoes. Yet at the same time, he was a tremendous mystic, because mystics have invariably been ordinary folks just like me and you. They have lived the ordinary householder's life. Why? To demonstrate to us that the very highest possible spirituality can be attained without you abandoning your family, without you abandoning the world as a whole. They teach us how to be in the world but not of the world. They teach us that we should provide and fulfill all of our roles and obligations to our family. We should earn a living. We should educate our children, and etc. And that this in no way interferes with one's quest for spiritual development. So Ravidas was a cobbler, and to Ravidas came a seeker in search of the perennial philosophy, in search of this high knowledge. And the student had brought to Ravidas his own ishtah of what constitutes sadhana, what constitutes spiritual practice. And he brought with him all of his scriptures, his Vedas, his sutras, his holy books, because after all, with a teacher of the caliber of Ravidas, it was his opportunity now to have vague scriptures made plain. He was going to be able to decipher a lot of the information that his own spiritual progress did not permit him to understand. And he had so many questions. We always have questions, you see. And he had his list, and he was totally prepared now to begin this spiritual training under the auspices of the great Ravidas. And so when he showed up, Ravidas told him, set all that stuff down, you see, change into his work clothes, and get over there and start making some soles for some shoes. Well, the young man thought, well, maybe he just wanted me to help him catch up on his work so that we have more leisure, you see, to study all of this stuff here that I prepared for him to train and teach me about. Well, needless to say, hours went by, in fact, days went by. And this young man began to question. He said, now, wait a minute here. This man has got me every day cutting out soles, washing leather in buckets of water. It's a stinky, dirty, nasty job. I'm not come here for employment. I've come here to learn how to go into the deeper parts of consciousness and all these high, profound things. And so he summed up his courage and he confronted Ravidas. He says, Master, he says, months have passed by. I've been here. And you have taught me nothing. All we've been doing is making shoes and washing leather and all of this, He said, but Master, I'm not coming for that. And Ravidas said, I know what you come here for. He says, and you're going to get everything that you come here for. But please, never question me again. You know nothing about this art of spirituality. You don't know what I'm doing. You have no idea what I'm doing. And, of course, the man understood, submitted himself. And Ravidas went on to make the man in his own right a mystic. The point is that most of us come to these teachers like the student came to Ravidas. And the teacher said, well, change your diet. And you, for the life of you, can't see no correlation. The mystic said, go get married. And you said, well, what marriage has to do with making spiritual progress? The mystic said, go get you a job. And you're just dumbfounded. What does that have to do? You see? So very often the most difficult part for us is to release our own clinging to our own ideals of what constitutes spiritual practice. And then we are in a position to be taught. Like that Zen student coming to that Zen master. And the Zen master pours him a cup of tea. And he keeps pouring and pouring until finally the tea spills over the cup. Then the man looks at him and says, Master, what are you doing? Don't you see this thing that's full up? You can't get no more. And the master said, that's the same problem with you. Your head is so full of so much of what you call knowledge, I can't put none in you. So we have to empty ourselves if we are to receive the instructions from these great teachers. And so we spent these first 5 sessions trying to empty out some of the garbage that we have been associating with preparation for spirituality and spiritual development. And we've tried to share and pour back into that empty space in our heads some of the teachings that the Master themselves have given us. And we've talked about many things. We've talked about the necessity of morality. We talked about ethical living. We talked about diet. We talked about so many different aspects that you all have these things in your notes, and they're always there available for you to review. But all of these things are still just preparation. Today I wanted to begin to talk about now the actual technology associated with meditation. The understanding is that you have already made your decisions pertaining to whether or not you wish to pursue the path of the masters. And remember, it has to be your decision. It should come from you. It should not be the result of any coercion. It should not be the result of any kind of ambition to be a part of some kind of group or clique or something of that nature. The path of the masters are traveled by single solitary individuals. You see? But if you have set your spiritual goal, if you have decided that you wish to discover the divine nature of your own being, and that you are prepared to pay prices for that. Because remember, prices must be paid. And if that has been your decision, then fine. You will be able to follow me as we travel throughout these next 5 sessions. And if it has not been your decision, that's all right too. Nothing's wrong with that. One has to come to that point in their life where they are ready for this. So we're not to, in any shape, form, or fashion, feel that we are in any way wrong or doing anything wrong if our heart does not break for the Lord. If that barat, if that longing is not in you, nothing to worry about. It will come in time. But it is this kind of longing that must be there. It is this kind of unceasing quest for God realization that must be there. There must be something in you that will not deviate you from hitting your mark. There must be something in you that will not let your wife, will not let your husband, will not let your job, will not let your friend, will not let your lack of or possession of things and money, that will let nothing get in your way. And if you don't have that attitude, then you can't make spiritual progress. Even if you come to understand what is necessary to be done, you can't do it. You can't do meditation because you cannot reprioritize your life. You can't do it. And then you start feeling guilty for your inability to do the meditation. And this is unhealthy. There's no room on the path of guilt. Only understand. It simply means that your desire is not intense. You see? That your decision has not been fully made. There's something that you still are holding on to. Some ambition somewhere lurking in the deep recesses of your unconsciousness that divides your energies. You see? But if you are that person who have reached that state of mind, where you are prepared to pay whatever price must be paid for the experience of a lifetime, then meditation for you will be very successful. So we want to begin now by looking at the actual science of meditation, because there's a science to it. The ancient called it sacred science. Some have called it the science of the soul. So there is a science to it. It's not wishful thinking. This has nothing to do with your fantasizing. You see, it is a very scientific process. The process involved the withdrawal of consciousness from all of the territory in which we have scattered our attention back to a point within this body, and then move up and have the experience of self and God. And that is a science. There's a physics involved. We want to begin with, we talked a little bit, if you recall, about Patanjali and the 8 limbs of yoga as he set forth in his Yoga Sutras. And we use Patanjali because Patanjali brings to the art and study of meditation that kind of scientific outline of what you can expect and what you will need to be able to do. And one of the parts that we talked about a little bit, we will talk now more about it, is what they call dharana. And again, these Sanskrit words means nothing. Dharana needs to only be understood as to mean concentration. We have to learn how to concentrate. The ability to concentrate precedes the ability to meditate. It is a misnomer for most of us. When we sit and we struggle with this mind, you are struggling with your mind to achieve a degree of concentration. Meditation has not happened yet. Meditation is the outcome of the perfection of concentration. So the most difficult thing we have to do is to concentrate the mind, to concentrate our attention, to actually pull the attention back within the kingdom of God, which is inside of us. And this, for most of us, is the most difficult part of the path. Coming to the I center. It is the absolute hardest, most difficult part of the whole journey. Because the practice that we are involved in beneath the eye center, involved in the struggle to concentrate the mind, is always tedious. In many instances, it is boring. It does not produce any euphoria. It is just hard hard work. The Maharaji has likened it to licking a stone. Very apt, isn't it? Right? Just a dry stone lick. You see? And it is very hard to keep up our enthusiasm for our aliyasa, our spiritual practice, in light of the fact that most of us are deriving no pleasure from sitting and trying to do our meditation at all. Hence the necessity for that commitment. You see my point? If you're not committed, you're going to give up. Because how many mornings can you get up sitting there, your legs hurting, your mind not cooperating? 3, 4 at the most. And then you give up. It's understandable. There is no pleasure in it. So we have to have that commitment to take us through this part of the journey where there is no pleasant experience. There are no encounters with Jesus in the higher planes. There are no encounters with Buddha or Muhammad or Mahavira or any of the great teachers from antiquity. There is no siddhis and supernatural powers. There is no tremendous nature. None of that is just dry, boring, painful practice. And without a strong commitment, we cannot cross this first stage of the journey. It is the most important. Once we're able to come inside, now the whole thing reverses itself. So we're going to talk about the stages beneath the icing before we talk about the stages above the icing, because we're beneath the icing. We might as well talk about where we're at. So dharana, the training of the mind in such a way that we can make our minds concentrate. You know, a concentrated mind always accomplishes more than an unconcentrated mind, even in the world. So very often we find difficulties in the world because we can't concentrate. Our minds are too scattered. We can't accomplish anything at all. We cannot focus. We cannot concentrate. Our mind drifts. So concentration is a practical ability. Whether you wanted to go and become enlightened or not, one should still want to know how to concentrate. Now, the first thing that is required in the practice of yoga, we call that an asana. Asana means posture. We have to be able to sit this body down, to be still, as the Bible says. We have to find some comfortable posture that we can sit in for a minimum of 2.5 hours. That is your goal. And you may start off an hour, hour and a half, but the goal is for 2.5 hours. And 2.5 hours is not just a number thrown out there. It takes about 2.5 hours for all of the various components going that is keeping you out of a state of meditation to settle down. So you have to be able to train the body then. The first level of training in any meditation is at the level of the body. The body has to be trained. And those of us who are meditators know how difficult that is. It is difficult. But it must be done. The body has to be trained to hold one posture, one assignment, to be still. And why? So that to minimize the distraction on your attention. It is easier to concentrate when you be still. Especially for us. Right? Those who have mastered the art of concentration, they can concentrate while running. It doesn't matter. You see? But for novices like us, we have to first be still. We must give ourselves every advantage to succeed. And so the first thing is the body. And hence, the first level of distractions from concentrating the mind is the body. How do we concentrate the mind? We give the mind an activity to focus attention on as an alternative to allowing our attention to drift off and get entrapped and involved in all these other things that our minds run to. And we'll talk about that as we proceed. But initially, the thing that distracts us from that activity of concentrating on our object of meditation, or concentration more appropriately, the first obstacle that prevents us from concentrating on our object is the distractions of the physical body. Because when you sit motionless and still, you start experiencing all kinds of little pains and aches in your body. And the discomfort of the body distracts your attention. And so instead of you concentrating your mind on your object, you're concentrating on your body. Right? Your attention is on, oh, my legs are hurting, oh, my knees are, oh, my butt is hurting. You know, all of the discomforts that are going on in the body occupies the focus of your attention. Right? And this becomes a big obstacle for all of us, with no exception. With no exception. And therefore, we have to get past that. It's a big hurdle. It's a very big hurdle. One of the other obstacles, in addition to the pain, is sleep. Too many of us try to practice our meditation at the cost of giving the body enough sleep and rest. We will not. Whenever you sit and you become still, invariably, your whole tendency is to fall asleep. And you have a hard time staying awake. The mind is so used to coming into concentration and then dropping into a lower chakra, and we'll talk about chakras and all of that later on, where you generate the experience of sleep. So sleep becomes a big obstacle for many of us. So if it's not sleepiness, then it's pain. One of the two or both will assail you in those beginning stages, and we have to conquer them. Second obstacle to concentration is the emotions. So emotional nature. When you're trying to concentrate on your object, your activity, what we call japa, Simran, and I'll explain all of that. Very often your mind is distracted by a replay of some emotional experience that you see. Your mind becomes locked up in emotions, and you get distracted. All kinds of emotion, anger. Suddenly you're sitting in meditation, you remember how angry you are and so for doing something, and how that really pissed you off. And now your whole session is spent, you see, digesting that episode. Or you feel with a lot of ambitions, and your mind now is totally focused in on what you're going to do with the money that you just got, the raise that you just got, where you're going on vacation, so forth and so on. So it works both ways. The emotion need not necessarily be a painful emotion. It can be a pleasurable emotion. You be too excited, you see, sometimes, about some good thing that has happened to you. And you can't take your mind off it and concentrate. So the emotional distractions are the next level that we have to deal with in our effort to learn how to concentrate the mind. Third is just mental. Mental. Because the mind is a problem-solving mechanism. It solves problems. So we will find that very often while sitting in meditation, all of our attention is on solving problems. The mind sits there and generates a problem, and we spend all our time trying to solve it. Or we're worried about some problem that we have. And so the mind spends all this time So there are many distractions at the mental level. We're not going to try to exhaust all of the various examples of them. I just want you to get out a little familiar with the fact that these are some of the basic categories of distraction that you'll experience. Now, I want to come back now to and go into a little bit more of the dynamics underlying concentration, what the mystics have called dharana. How do you concentrate your mind? Have you ever thought about it? Remember, all experience that you are having in life is the result of you paying attention. You can have no experience unless you pay attention to that which you are experiencing. You experience whatever your attention falls on to. Therefore, if you want to experience God that is in you, you must be able to turn your attention inside of yourself. So, attention going this way generates the experience of the world. Attention directed this way generates the experience of God. To have that turning of attention, we have to learn how to pull the attention back into ourselves. And for that, we have to learn a few things. The mind has two basic activities that we have to engage in this effort to concentrate: thinking and visualizing. The mind fundamentally does two things. It thinks and it visualizes. We are always thinking about something pertaining to this world, are we not? At all times. And in thinking about the things that pertain to this world, it causes us also to visualize it. This capacity of the mind, this tendency in the mind to think, occurs because of the presence of what we call sura. Sura is one of the qualities of consciousness. Sura simply means the capacity to hear. Thinking goes on fundamentally in the form of listening to words flowing through your stream of consciousness, words that you hear meaning. You listen to yourself talk, and that you call thinking. Notice that. When you're thinking, you're actually listening to a stream of words running through your consciousness, and that you call thinking. Therefore, we want to break this thinking about the outside world, the external world. We try to insert then into the thinking process words, holy words. We call them holy because the objective is to take us in toward God. Holy words that do not have an outside connotation and therefore take our attention out of the world. In ancient times, the ancestor called these words hakus. They also have been called mantras in the East. So by using a mantra, we're able now to interrupt the mind's automatic tendency to think in terms of words. And we block out that activity. Now, I must forewarn you that the science of spirituality that the mystics have advocated is very, very advanced. In fact, for most people, it's too advanced. Because your concept of meditation has been 3 or 4 minutes here, right? Burning some incense, listening to some music in the background, right? That's been your ideal of meditation. Or at best, maybe the selection of a scripture here and there, reading it and thinking about its meaning. That's not meditation. And so when we encounter these kind of very, very, very advanced stages, we invariably find them difficult. But be that as it may, there is no other way. Buddhahood is not such a cheap experience you can get it by lighting some incense and playing some real music in the background. If it was, there would have been billions of Buddhas by now. If you want to attain what Buddha did, you're going to have to do what Buddha did. If you want Christ consciousness, then you're going to have to do what Christ did. It's as simple as that. The other tendency in the mind is visualization. The mind wants to see something. So we give the mind something to see other than the objects of this world. The mind capacity to see is based in the reflection of the soul's capacity to see, which in the East is called nidit. Consciousness can see. You have the capacity to see independent of these physical eyes. That capacity to see is what enables you to see in your dream. Do you not see in your dream? Right? In your dream you see. But the seeing that is going on in your dream obviously is not occurring with these physical eyes. Why? Because the capacity to see is independent of the physical eyes. The physical eyes is just an organ through which this capacity to see associates itself on the physical plane. The great mystic talks about the third eye inside that sees inwardly. This capacity to see, therefore, is independent. And so are all the other senses. Yes, Lieutenant.
So you said somebody like Stevie Wonder who has never seen these worldly objects can see?
He will have the capacity to see. There's
So
nothing
he's never
else.
visually experienced these outer objects? And
He could see darkness. Even to see darkness requires the capacity to see. What is it that sees darkness? Darkness requires the capacity to see. If you couldn't see darkness, how could you say everything is dark? The consciousness has the innate capacity to see. Period. Independent of all of the body's apparatus. The same is the case with every other sense. In a dream, you are able to hear.
that's because I've heard before and I've seen before.
No, you will hear anyway. You will see anyway. There had to be, if you moved it back, Lieutenant, in aggression, you cannot come out of a state of inability to see and suddenly develop the capacity to see. There must have been something at day one that enabled you to see the world when you first experienced it. That is the capacity to see. That is built into the very structure of consciousness. You have to meditate on it. It'll become clear. And it is these two functions of the mind that has to be adequately engaged for purposes of concentration. We're going to have plenty of time to examine them in all the details. My task now here is to give you a kind of cosmology of the mind, because this is something that is not very often available to us. We all know we got a mind, but we don't know nothing about the structure and the physics of the mind. So now we engage these activities of the mind. The inserting of words, mantras, into the mind to replace the mind's constant stream of thoughts. Thoughts are nothing but words pertaining to the world. The mystics have used a device called japa, the repetition of these words, this mantra. Some in the East, in our tradition, we have called it Simbran. Simbran means this repetition. So the first thing that you want to do is want to give that mind something to repeat over and over again, so that it brings itself off of focused on thoughts pertaining to the world. I want you to understand that you cannot break your concentration with the world. You cannot break your connection with the world unless you're able to cease thinking about the world. Do you understand that? You have to be able to shut down our constant thinking about the world to come out of the world. There is no other way. And by utilizing the science of japa and the science of Simbran, we're able to shut down one of those components of the mind that entangles us in the world. The visualization is shut down by Dion. It's by visualizing something. other than something in this world. So the Simran and Diyan then are the two of the major components for concentrating the mind. In fact, that is the whole purpose of Simran and Diyan. It's simply to concentrate the mind. When the mind gets concentrated, there is no more need for Simran and Diyan. It drops out. Then the concentrated mind now opens up in us another faculty that most of us don't know we have. We all know about the sensual faculties and all these other things, you know, maybe about the faculty of intuition and things of that nature. But we also have a faculty of transport. A faculty that allows us to travel, for consciousness to travel. And when the mind gets concentrated through the practice of Simran, this faculty of transport now becomes available. And the thing that pulls us in that whole process of traveling is what the mystics have called the word, or nam, or shabbat, or the African mystic call it numo, the Muslim call it kalma. So many names, nod, sound current, sound. The self makes a sound. And by focusing our attention on that sound, we travel back to the origin of our own being. It's very profound. We're going to unravel all these things. We're going to take our time over these next 5 sessions. I am throwing all this out here. Don't feel that you're the only one confused. All right? We'll make sense out of it later on. And this practice now becomes the third part of any practice to concentrate. And that's called bhajan. Bhajan simply means listening to that sound. Now I'm giving you a lot of stuff out here because I want you to have the whole story. The more you understand about what you're trying to do, the more committed you can remain towards your goal. Yes.
What was 2 and 3 on that?
2 and 3, 2 was Dhyan, 3 was Bhajan. Okay? And these again are practices that are involved in this whole process of going within. Because we want to talk about the fact that all mystics, all saints, all sages, all founders of religion talk about going within. Going within. The question is, how do you go within? Now, you've been reading scriptures. Have you gone within? How do you go within? The masters teach the science of and art of going within. And we're going to be talking about this science and art of going within. I am just familiarizing you with a little of the jargon, and you will forgive me. Some jargon is absolutely inescapable, so that your intellects will be able to follow this thing. So now that we have a better understanding, at least of the philosophy of meditation, we have an understanding of what concentration is. Let's go into it a little deeper. Many things you have to understand. First thing, consciousness, when it comes into this body, flows through a series of points on the back of the spine. These points on the back of the spines have been called chakras. Chakra simply means wheel. It is the fact that energy, consciousness, comes into this body. As it moves down into this body, at each different point where consciousness meets with a chakra, it gives you the capacity to generate a certain experience. In fact, you have a certain experience. When you look at your life is a fabric woven by an infinite series of individual experiences. Is it not? Think about in a movie. When we sit in a movie and we see that picture, we're really having an optical illusion of it. Because what is that thing that looks solid and connected and flowing? It's nothing but a series of frames, individual pictures right? Running through a light source at very fast speeds, at speeds greater than the speed that your naked eye has to detect. Isn't that right? Is that right? And so it looks like you're having a seamless experience. But actually that seamless experience is made up of an infinite series of small experiences. It's sort of like that. When consciousness hits this body, right? And as consciousness moves through the circle of this body, consciousness moves simplistically through this body, right? Coming down the back and up the front. That is the cycle in which consciousness moves. And as consciousness is moving so rapidly, far more rapid than you can detect, touching through all of these chakras, it generates your entire experience. It's interesting. This lowest chakra in the body is the chakra at the spine, at the anal opening. I'm not a good artist here, so you all forgive me. Bilal got all of that, right? You got the looks and everything else. Huh? That's right. Show you right. Do my best here, though, right? I got them too. Can y'all, does this look like any kind of human being you ever seen? All right. That's good enough?
It's a reasonable facsimile.
That's a reasonable facsimile. All right, then let me get these things positioned a little bit better. This is the navel. You all know what the rest of those are. I'm only telling you this so that you understand what you're trying to do. Because if you don't understand what you're trying to do when you're doing this thing called meditation, you will give up. You will definitely give up. If the understanding is not solid, you will not be able to consistently practice your meditation. It is impossible. It must be solid, right? You must have such a great understanding. Your conviction must be so high, you see, that you are able to survive all of the natural tendencies not to meditate. Okay? Now, as I said before, there's also a chakra here at the top of the head. Have you ever noticed in a baby, there's a center here, it's real soft? You ever noticed that? Right. Where the soul enters into the body. Right? It's also the same point that the soul goes out of the body. Okay? Now, there's all kinds of names for these things here, you see. But I just want to talk about what these centers function. The lower center is called very often the Muladhara chakra. And it is the center, when consciousness hit here, it is what generates in you the capacity to have the experience of gravity. This feeling of gravity that you experience, of being rooted to the earth, fixed to the earth, not flying off into space somewhere. This experience of fixity is generated by consciousness passing through this chakra at the base of the body, called the Muladhara chakra. What happens when the mystic or yogi sits and pulls the attention up from that lower chakra, the Muladhara chakra, you have the experience of levitation. You have the experience of being out of the body, so to speak. You have the experience of floating. Because the connection with gravity ceases. You follow me? It is very similar to if you sit in a posture for a long period of time and your legs are crossed or your arms are folded. You notice how that leg go dead? And you can't feel the flow no more? Right? Well, when the tension is pulled from this chakra, you lose the whole experience of this body, responding to gravity. Somewhere in the ancient days, the mystics would actually start their practice by pulling attention up from every chakra first. They will start at the very lowest chakra of the body and then sequentially withdraw attention, because your attention is in your butt. Some of us, most of our attention is in our butt, right? You see, right? So that is one of the centers in the body that consciousness travels through in its circularity that generates certain experiences. Out of this chakra, you see, I just put initials here to help you remember them. This is often called the Swadhisthana chakra. It is the chakra that houses the generative organs. Here, all creativeness, the ability to create, is centered in this part of the body. This is where from here we create life, semen, and you know all of these things. You all know enough about biology. This chakra here houses in us the capacity to create life. And when you put your attention in this chakra here, you can create. In ancient times, some of the yogis, through a practice called Tantra Yoga, will work on this chakra. You see? It will make this chakra very developed. Because all creative acts occur with the energy coming here. And if you take this energy and you can create babies with it, you can create art with it, you can create music with it, you can create anything you want with it. But the source of all creative energy arising in this body is housed in this chakra. You see, that's why very creative people will cease having a lot of sex. You will notice very often when a person is very, very, very creative, you almost invariably find they're not very sexual. Because all of that energy that's been thrown out into sexual behavior is held within the person and is used to fuel their creativity. The same joy that you get from hitting the sheets, Picasso got from hitting the canvas. Identical. Identical. The same pleasure we get from sex, a scientist will get from working in their lab. Identical. It is as orgasmic. So this ability to create, this energy that allows us to be creative, is housed here. And we can pull it up and redirect it. Hence the practice of, if you remember, we talked about brahmacharya. You know how to spell it, I'm not going to talk that. Brahmacharya was what? It was disciplining your sexuality. It was making available this sexual energy, this creative energy, for higher spiritual purposes. And so this is another one of the chakra. The next chakra in the body, right? It's called the Manipura chakra. And the Manipura chakra is that chakra in the body where you will find all that energy that sustains the body, that sustains you. The capacity to sustain anything is generated by this. It's interesting, in the East they represent these chakras with their trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma meaning the creator, Vishnu the sustainer, and Shiva the destroyer. But it is this chakra here at the navel center, right? In this area in the physical body, all your food is processed, all of the separation of the nutrients and energy out of the food that you ingested, all of that is going on in this area, arena, right? And then that energy, that life force is distributed throughout the rest of the body. This is the center that generates, literally generates life force. The elan vital, right? And by learning how to consciously move this energy into any of your activity, you can sustain it. You can give them life. The secret of healing is from this chakra.
Like the solar plexus?
Solar plexus, yes, the solar plexus. It is life-giving, sustaining. The heart chakra. Now remember, I'm not talking about these organs. I'm talking about points on the spine. All right? Not these organs in front of them. I'm talking about the spine now. Your spine is your it's like your electrical system. It's the nervous system, right? At this third chakra, they call it the heart center, right? Or the anahata chakra. When consciousness passes through here, what becomes available is the capacity to end anything. Death. The energy that can kill is housed here at the heart center. Very interesting. When those mystics now are able to harness the energy in the heart chakra, the anahata chakra, you see, they literally hold the power of life and death. You see, you can see how a yogi who has mastered these chakras now can kill people and raise people from death. What is the problem? There is no problem. They are mastering the energies in the body. The third one is often called the throat center. Okay? And at this center, number what? Yes. Is that right? I'm on number 2. Okay. At this center produces and generates dreams. It is the center that generates the experience of the different states of mind. When we talk about sleep and dream and all this other stuff, dreams come from here. Deep sleep is here, right? And I'm just going to accelerate this in the interest of time. I just want to get it out here. I don't expect you to know all of this stuff. I want to get it out here because you have to understand this here to appreciate the grandness of the path taught by the masters. And here at this chakra, the Ajna chakra, the third eye, the eye of Heru, whatever you want to call it, Tarisvatita, it's been called many names. When consciousness hit here, it generates the experience of the mind. Now this is interesting. The mind that you're in now, it generates the experience of mind in the waking state. And let me tell you folks something that is really startling. It is when consciousness hits actually these 3 centers to be active, well these 2. It creates and generates the experience of I. That experience of I in you, I want some water, I want some money, I'm tired, I need to go to sleep. That I is generated when consciousness hits here. When your consciousness hits here and you go into deep, dreamless sleep, there is no experience of I at all. It gets killed. So, when the yogis are able to harness this energy generated at the second chakra, it can create a kind of reality for people. The yogi can conjure. They can create oases and deserts. There's a great yogi in India called Sai Baba. And when you go to Sai Baba pulls stuff literally out of the air and hand it to you. He may pull a piece of jewelry or flour, or he may pull this, or he may pull that. He is using the energy here, that energy to create your experience of reality. And of course, when the consciousness hits this chakra, is predominantly focused at this chakra, that is what is generating the experience that you're having now. Okay? The path begins here. The path of the master is from this point up. The path of the occultist is from this point down. The occultist is looking for supernatural powers, the ability to read minds, heal, stuff like that. That's their whole ambition. The mystic ambition is to know God himself. And therefore their path in the body moves in 2 different directions. Yes.
Bhagwan.
Yes, sir.
just 59 seconds. Would you correlate with that, with the African cosmology?
Yes.
I know number 5 was the house of Heru.
Yes. Now, the African mystics also divide our spirit into 10 categories. They talk about a greater number of chakras. In African cosmology, there's chakras in the shoulders too. I mean, it's very intricate. But fundamentally, Satra, what you're talking about is the 10 divisions of being that the African mystics talk about. Okay? And it's very interesting. The lowest being the Kat. The physical body. Okay? Because most of our identity of who we are is based on this physical body. And remember, in African mysticism, the whole ideal is to elevate your sense of who you are from the lowest thing to the highest. So I want you to bear in mind. In fact, all meditation has as its aim the elevation of the locus of your identification of who you think you are. Because who you think you are is what determines how you behave. If you think you're only the physical body, now death is going to terrify you. And everything you're going to be doing is trying to avoid death. If you think you're the physical body, all of your energy will be spent on trying to maintain this physical body in this comfort. Because that's who you think you are. And there's a mechanism in us that automatically forces us towards survival. Survival of whatever you think you are. Whatever kind of self you think you are. At whatever level of the self you think you are, there's an automatic tendency to try to perpetuate the survival of that thing. So the ancients divide the lowest dimension of one's being, one's soul, to that of the physical body. The next one, I should say that here, in the physical body too, there is the Kaibet. Okay, the Kaibet. And the Kaibi is sort of like your personality. This body has a personality based on association and all these other things. We've gone over that, and that's easy for you to understand. I'm just going to put it up here quickly for you, Satra, because you asked for it. The next level is Aset, isn't it, right? Aset. Who is Aset? Who is Aset? All you black people in here, huh? Who is Aset? Huh? Aset is that symbol, right, of the mother, right? And this is really the level of memory, stuff like that. All your memories are housed in that. Very, very much like your astral body. Let me get them up here first. You have Aset, then you have Sikher. Who is it? What is it?
Seker.
Sikher. Okay. Next one you have? Next one? Next one? Heteru. Have you studied African mysticism? Nobody study African mysticism? Okay, number 6 is Heru. Right? Right? Number 5 is Heru Kuti. What is number 4, ladies? Number 4, nobody knows? Ma'at. What is number 3? Number 3? No, that's number 2. Tehuti. Chekum. What is number 1? Oh, they all know that. All right. Give yourself a big round of applause, all right? Well, actually, now, from what we're talking about, here, in individuals, where everybody knows you got to have a body, in that body there are certain faculties going on. The capacity to memorize. Sibek, actually. Sibek means intellect, right? Intellect. This has been called like creative imagination. actually, these are the three components of the mind, aren't they? The mind does three things: sense, reason, and then rearranges what it has sensed and reasoned upon in the form of creative thinking. Right? The ancestors said that for most human beings, you never develop beyond this point at all. They have called such a being Sahu, undeveloped man. Right? For most of us, we never go beyond that in terms of our faculties or our levels of identification. We don't go beyond the mind, ever. We never move into that dimension of our being that is transcendental to our minds. So the mind plane is the highest level of our identification. Heru means will, the capacity to will. Now, I know we've been thinking we have willpower. The ancient ancestors said, no, you don't have any will. Everything you do is conditioned. Everything you do is a reaction. Everything you do is automaticity. Everything you do arises out of your condition. You have no choice. You are a victim of your conditioning. You are like a handful of dust that must rise and move in any direction that the wind blows. Your eyes see something and you cannot stop your eyes from following that beautiful woman to save your life. Beautiful sound coming, you cannot get that note out of your head, you are humming it all day. Ancestors say that you are a total slave to your senses. You have no freedom whatsoever. If the alarm clock rings at 3 o'clock and it is time to meditate, you can't do that because everything you do will be dictated by your body, craving for comfort. And if the body just so happens to not say, well, I guess I'll let you meditate, then okay, then you can go ahead and do it. But if the body says no, what can you do? You are totally enslaved to the lower dimensions of your being. And the ancient African mystic called these kind of individuals like us Sahu. You're just a little better than an animal. Not much, just a little better. Right? A little higher than an animal. But you certainly have no will. Will is when we come to that level where we, in the development in our being, where we are able to open the faculty that generates the experience of having a will. Now, the will and intelligence now is in charge of all of this here. All of these three pieces, which are really the apparatus of the mind, comes under the control of the will. Now your mind do what you tell it to do. Right now, your mind don't do anything you tell it to do at all. Is that right? Your mind does whatever the hell it wants to do. If your mind is caught up in some negative thinking, you can't tell your mind don't think about that. Your mind don't pay you no attention. It keeps right on thinking about it. Because you have nothing, you have not developed that part of your being that enables you to have control over your mind. Right? A lot of people have not even developed these two higher faculties of the mind even. They just here. They work entirely off memory. They do whatever they remember they did last time, and they repeat this over and over. The memory houses a program for them. You see? And whenever a new experience comes up, they look back at what did they do last time, and then their whole apparatus try to repeat things. They live even in the lower parts of the mind. So the African mystics who had a tremendous insight into this thing, in many respects more profound than the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Kabbalists, you see, a very profound understanding. Herakuti, this is the center where you now can have the capacity to know right from wrong, righteousness. All righteous, the capacity to behave righteously becomes available to you here, right? Because here, you can also see that this is like the faculty of intuition. You can know stuff. You don't need to go through that process of thinking anymore. You have knowledge and will, and therefore you can do that which is righteous. Until we have moved to this level of our being, you have no capacity to behave righteously. It's just nonsense. A Sahu person, by definition, cannot be righteous. It's impossible. There is no will or intelligence available for righteousness. What you call righteousness is acting along the axis of your preferences, and then you rationalize it. What you call righteous is nothing but your disguising what you want to do, and that you proclaim. That's righteous. But it's just a disguise. It's hocus pocus. It's pseudo. It's false. It has no reality, no basis, nothing. It is not a categorical. It is not an imperative at all. It is just your disguising your own lower propensities in some clever words. But it has nothing to do with righteousness. You have no capacity to behave righteously. The next level, ma'at. Ma'at have so many meanings. It means love. It means harmony. Fundamentally, it's the capacity to experience oneness. Because remember, love is fundamentally the capacity and consciousness to have the experience of oneness. Love is the capacity and consciousness to have the experience of oneness. And at the level of ma'at, that happens. And out of that experience of oneness, you can practice harmony. You can practice reciprocity. You can practice all of these very beautiful and varied dimensions of ma'at. Incidentally, ma'at was the goal, aim, and objective of the average citizen in ancient Africa, in Kemet. The whole culture moved toward the attaining of the conscious level of ma'at. Like we try to get money, they tried to get ma'at. Like we try to get a PhD, they went for ma'at. Right? That was their aim and objective. And that is why they were able to create a civilization that was unparalleled. Right? No need for any outside police. In our society, moral and righteous behavior has to be enforced from the outside. Now we remove all these cops, and you're going to see what level of morality we got. My brother's a policeman. He'll tell you. If the policeman goes on strike, this place will blow up. You see, then you will be able to measure our real level of morality. Right? At this level, you will behave appropriately whether cops are there or not. At this level, we need cops. Not only do we need cops, we need all those laws that Congress has passed. Because if Congress didn't pass those laws, you'll do any damn thing. We will. That's our natural. We're Sahu people. That's our tendency. If I can cheat on my income tax, I'm going to cheat. If there was not the laws there. If there was no red light there, I'm not stopping. I don't care who in the road. They got to put a red light out there. Right? Because I don't have the necessary stuff to regulate my own behavior. I am Sahu. Moses came to give his laws to Sahu people. Moses didn't come from people up in these upper categories at all. When you are able to develop this part, this part here is called the Ib. That higher knowledge, you see. All religions, all teachings, all scriptures, all Bibles, all Qurans, all Dampundadas, all Torahs are for Sahu people. Religion is for Sahu people as a whole. Why? Because the religion has to teach you, don't steal, now Pam, don't commit adultery, Bhagwan, don't drink, don't do, you have to be taught, you have to be sort of policed. When these other higher faculty open, no one has to tell you to do none of that stuff. Your morality is intuited, it is not extuited. You see the difference? So ma'at is there. Here, power. Actually, these three are considered the creative faculties of God. Power, omnipotent. Real power is there. Power. Now you have power. Sahu people, we ain't got no power. We think we got power. But then that's because we're Sahu people. Right? But we have no power. Jesus speaks about us. He said, you think you got some power. You can't change a hair gray. You can't do nothing. But Jesus is trying to remind us that you don't have no power at all. You have no power. You're going to get sick. You have no power over that. You're going to die. You have no power over that. You have no power over nothing. Your life is just a random series of events all occurring outside your power. You have nothing. You're not calling those shots. Karma dictates everything that's going to happen to you. You see, at the level of Shechem, there is no karma. Karma pertains to Sahu people somewhere. No karma. Everything that happened to you is to happen because of your karma. Period. And it's only because of our ignorance of our karma that we have the illusion of free will. That's all. So our little sense of free will and power is an illusion based on our ignorance. Tahute, knowledge. Perfect knowledge. Total knowledge. What they call omniscience. Perfect knowledge. I don't even know if the word knowledge is right. Probably wisdom. I don't know. I don't know any word that can adequately talk about what Tahuti faculty makes available to the human being who has attained that level. You see? And naturally, Asah, you know, and this is just, I don't know. I can only put oneness. And I mean a different oneness than at the level of my aunt. At the level of Asah, you have the experience that there is only one being. That's it. That there is no reality to our experience of the multiplicities of beings. There's only one being, period. Right? And that is you. It's a profound thing. Words now are meaningless. It's best that I remain silent at this level. Because anything I'm saying about Asar is going to be wrong. Anything I say will be misleading. There's nothing to be said. One can only be silent. Only silent.
You know,
Yes, sister.
I found that some of these things you've written down, I started last year trying to read Metta Nature, and it is very deep.
Yes, very
But it gives you a definition for all these,
Yes.
and even like you said, trying to give a definition to our side, tries to give you a good one.
Yes.
It gives you those three levels of men, like you said,
Yes.
Asa, Sahu, and the Ba man.
Yes, yes.
And I said, you had some tapes over there on
There's some
Metta
tapes in
Nature.
there. All right.
And I said, I get the tapes and maybe I get a better understanding
Oh,
because you
should've kept
really
that
have to.
yourself, huh? Take them tapes, huh?
You really have to be, like you said, in a state of time where you're concentrating.
Yes. You have to
To
be very
grasp it.
concentrated. Now, the ancestor developed a meditation system that moves you sequentially from one level of identity to the next, until you go back to this highest level of your reality. When we talk about being, this constitutes the totality of being. And when we're talking about the supreme being, we're talking about being at this level. When you are being at the level of Asar in you, you are at the level of your supreme being. When you are at the level of the Kat, you're at the lowest level of your being. You see? And then these are the points between you at the Kat level and you at the God level. But it's you all along the way. And as you go on elevating your basis of identity, of who we are as a self, throughout this hierarchy, it causes us to have an entirely different experience of the world. So there's a lot more that can be said and should be said about this ancient cosmological system. The reality is that almost all systems of spiritual practices has their origin in this system. I'm just looking at the surface of this. It's a lot deeper than what we've been able to go into. So these are levels. Similarly, in the chakra center, as you move through the chakra center, you have different levels of experience of your identity. Like when you're able to move it beyond the Malagadara chakra and lose the experience of this body, for the first time you realize, I'm not the body. Now that's over with. Right now, you cannot have the experience of not being the body without going to a higher level of consciousness. I don't care how many books you read. It's just talk. Now, nothing's wrong with that. Please don't misunderstand me. But the reality is that unless you are able to pull the consciousness up from that lower chakra to the next chakra, you do not have the capacity to have the feeling that you are not the body. And you will behave as such, irrespective of what you say. That's just reality. So the mystic said, don't play word games. Don't try to philosophize yourself to a higher chakra. You can't philosophize yourself to a higher chakra. Withdraw the attention to a higher chakra and have the authentic experience. Right? Here, bringing the attention here, you can see this world clearly is not real. But you can't have that experience that this world is not real if you haven't been able to pull the consciousness to that chakra. No sense in even pretending. So Maharaji said, you don't know that this world is not real. Now do whatever is necessary in this real world that you experience. Do your duty. Don't talk about, oh, the world ain't real, therefore I'm not going to feed my kid. This is nonsense. You know, this is hocus pocus. The world is real for you. And therefore you must do the things that are dictated by your experience of this reality. If you don't follow it like that, you become schizophrenic. You get all messed up inside, right? When our identification is here with the asset level and all these other things, now we identify ourselves with our actions, what we've done, my reputation. Now you are your reputation. What is that? You are the actions that this body has went through. But that's what you identified as. And you fight like hell to defend that. You see, that is unreal. You see, you're not the body, you're not its reputation, you're not the things that it's done, you're none of that stuff. But that has to be experienced, you see. So it gets very, very deep. Now, would you order a pizza for us? You have the number, yes, please. A large, you know it. So, there are many cosmological systems for talking about these same things. We talked about the 6 centers beneath the eye center. There are also 6 centers above the eye center. And we'll talk some about those. But now let us have any question on what we said before we take our break. Because by the time we eat the pizza, everything would have disappeared. Anything?
Bhagwan, would you want to add anything more to the top crown chakra, other than this the place that opens when the...
Yes. On the top of the head, I say that this is the Sahasrara chakra. Now, when your consciousness goes through this chakra, right? Now you leave the physical body and you enter into the astral body, which contains the physical body. Are you with me on this? Are you able to follow me?
Yes.
The physical body is contained within the astral body, right? When you're able to pull your attention all the way up out of this physical body, go through the opening at the top of the head, you come out somewhere, don't you? You come out into your astral body now, and that body now becomes active. And now you identify more with your astral body, right? And the astral body have a whole different range of experiences than the physical body. In the astral body, you can experience heaven, you can experience hell, and all these other things. You can't experience that in the physical body. You see my point?
And so someone who is feeling that they're experiencing reality on the astral level, would this be someone who is only doing that during the dream state? Or let's say somebody...
Dreams are in the body.
Okay, so how would they experience their astral state if they're not doing meditation, or is there any other way to experience?
There is no other way.
Except through meditation.
Except through, once you are able to come up out of this physical body, locate yourself in your astral body, once you're able to have that experience one time, then it is from the astral body now that you experience even your physical body.
One time?
when it's one time, when you finally get it there.
Okay, we can do it.
Right. When you are able to reposition it to reestablish yourself in an astral level of consciousness, right? Then now you experience your physical body like an object, right? Like you experience Avia and you see Avia, you'll see this body like that. There will be some distance, right? And there will be no more attachment in that sense. It's very profound. Yes, sister, and then we'll go to break.
Hi, yes, I want to ask a question. When people have like a near-death experience, and they have experienced leaving the body and being able to maybe levitate or something,
Yes,
or
yes,
be
yes.
on a plane higher than
Yes.
that, being able to look down, at what point or level?
Where they at? Here's what happened. The act and the experience of physical death is nothing but the forced withdrawal of attention from these chakras up here. Now, near-death experience to get up here, the astral body is defined as light in all mythology. It's the body of light. The attention gets up here and it sees all this light, right? It sees this radiant form. And it sees itself moving toward that radiant form. And if it goes all the way, it will merge into that radiant form. But sometimes, if the karma is such that they are not through with their palabda on this plane, they'll see that radiant form of their own astral body, but they have to come back here. But just seeing their own radiant astral body is enough to alter the experience of reality. Just a peek at it, and immediately when they come back, they're more loving. They haven't even touched it. They come back, they're never the same anymore. Their whole agenda is different. Their whole attitude is different. Their fear of death is gone, right? Their whole priorities shift. They're smelling roses. They eating ice cream. They're walking along the beach. They are visiting loved ones. They ain't into none of that stuff that they were into prior to the near-death experience. But at the time of death, you see, all of us go through that. And what is really the whole advantage of mysticism and dying while living is that at the time of death, you're going to go through this withdrawal anyhow. All that pain that you experience in your meditation and all that suffering that you're trying to avoid, you're going to go through all of that. And you're not going to be able to get up off your deathbed and rub your legs at all. You're not going to be able to get up off your deathbed and go outside and take care of that pressing piece of business. Laying on your deathbed, you're going to go through the whole lot. So the mystics say, why do that? Learn to die now. Get it over with. Die while living. Paul says in the Bible, die daily. Not just once, every day. You should be able to do this here. And go into this. Now, inside, and we'll talk about that later when we come back, inside of the astral body, there's also 6 chakras. And what do we do? It's the same technique. You start from the lowest astral chakra and you pull up. And when you come out of the astral body, you'll find yourself stepping into your causal body. Right? We're going to go into all of these things, but now let us take a break. We'll resume at 3:30, and we'll have some pizza for you. And again, I apologize for my tardiness. That's pretty good. That's very good.
No, because I take it off of something else and that's going to play. His is not going to pick up, so take it off.
I wanted to provide you with some of the background in this whole tradition of spiritual practice. And what you have to understand is that there is a great tradition of spiritual practice that has been on the planet since time immemorial. And I want you to be able to appreciate all of these great traditions. That's why I talk about Islam, I'll talk about Christianity, I'll talk about Hinduism and Buddhism. Not that I wish to elevate one above the other, but I don't want us to miss anything that will be useful from these great traditions that will aid us in our own individual quest for spiritual attainment. And all of them, without exception, have something beautiful to offer us. They all can set before our mind's eye an example of the very finest that you can find in the human experience. So it's in that spirit that I think you should always interpret whatever my comments are on these great religions. The ultimate system of spiritual cultivation that we will talk about in this series will be what has been called Sutta Shabbat Yoga. Sutta Shabbat Yoga. And this yoga has been taught from time immemorial across all cultures, not just Africa. We mustn't get caught up in any kind of ethnic arrogance. The Lord has left a system for every branch of humanity to traverse, to come into a high state of spirituality. We are simply using this terminology because that's the terminology that I understand. But it has been called many things. The Muslim call it the Kamal. Allah. Same system, just called by different names. So many different names. But the system involves the same goal, which is through the process of meditation, the withdrawal of our consciousness from the world back into our outermost core of our being, the physical body, the Khat, as we just have seen the African ancestor call it, into deeper and deeper levels of our interiority, penetrating first through the physical, then penetrating into the astral, then penetrating deeper into the causal, and then penetrating into our form that is without body, formless, have no form. And then moving deeper and deeper into the very nature of consciousness until we come to the core of it, where resides the true essence of our identity. And so this Sutta Shabbat Yoga has been the system of meditation that has been prescribed across time. And the Jewish tradition, we find it in the Kabbalah, in the great Kabbalists of medieval Spain. Giants like the Ari of Seville, giants like Abraham Lariano, giants like Baal Shem Tov have taught the same system. You see? So we're going to talk about that. And you have to understand then that this path is fundamentally for those seekers who are looking for the highest state available to human consciousness, who are not afraid to merge with God. If you love God, then become one with Him. What is the problem? If you love Him, then throw yourself and disappear into Him. Give up your individual identity. Like a drop merges in the ocean. We should be willing to do that, you see. And there are those rare seekers who seek that level, where they are dissolved into the divine. And on break, Satra was telling me a beautiful story. They tell me all these beautiful stories, then I get a chance to come up here and tell them to you, and then that way I create the illusion that I know an endless variety of beautiful stories. So this is my secret that I'm sharing with you. So if you like these stories, then you get this Satra and shake stories out of them. Shake them until he give you a story. But you have to be adamant. And he was sharing with me a story from the life of Sikh Siibli, a great Sufi mystic. And Satra tells the story. On one occasion, two seekers came to Sheikh Siibli for initiation, because you have to remember, one has to be initiated into the practice of these higher systems of spiritual cultivation. you have to be guided along that path. You cannot read a book and initiate yourself. No more than you can give birth to yourself. Initiation is a form of birth. The word itself suggests to put something into motion, to start something into motion. And like Newton told us, an object at rest tends to remain at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. That is one of Newton's 3 laws that we recall from our high school days. Similarly, we're like that object in a state of inertia. Unless some mystic, some saint comes and initiate us, we will remain absolutely as we are. In and of ourselves, we have no moment to raise ourselves. Just as you could not give birth to yourself, similarly, you will not be able to enlighten yourself by yourself. And so the initiation is required. And these 2 seekers understood the value of initiation. In ancient times, men and women would undergo all kinds of ordeals and hardships to seek out these great men and women and become initiated into the secrets. This insight was not written out in books. They could not go to Barnes and Nobles and Crocs and Botanos and all these various other outlets and walk down a section on metaphysics and pull a book off the shelf. Couldn't happen like that. Whatever knowledge had to come orally from that teacher. So these 2 seekers who came to Sheikh Sabi was of that order. They understood the value of initiation, and they had sought out the great Sheikh for initiation. And the Sheikh wanted to see which was fit for his initiation. Just in the Bible, it is said that everyone who call upon me, Lord, Lord, shall not be saved. Just because you want to be saved, that does not mean you will be saved. Is that right? There's a kind of grace involved in this thing, right? And so he really wanted to make sure before he bestowed Nam, initiation, that knowledge that enables you now to practice the spiritual science and thereby liberate your soul from the clutches of your mind and the senses. Before he was willing to share, initiate them, give them, bequeath upon them this knowledge, he wanted to see if they were fit for it. Today, you see, we're not like those old-time seekers. We assume we're fit from day one. Bhagwan, I'm fit. I read 12 books, and I haven't killed anybody. Therefore, I'm fit. You give them all. Right? In the old day, they were much more humble than we were. They were not as presumptuous. And so they were understood that some kind of test must be given. So Sheikh Sabi offered them the test because they were Muslims. And he wanted to see what was going on with them. And to the first seeker, he asked them, okay, I want you to repeat what is called the foundation of Islam. The most sacred statement that you can make in Islam. He wanted them to repeat La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul Allah. There is one God, right? And Muhammad is his prophet. Now for an Orthodox Muslim, you see, there's only one God. And Muhammad is his prophet. So Sabi said, I want you to repeat ilaha illallah Sheikh Sabi Rasul Allah. And what the seeker said, man, what are you talking about? I can't, you're not higher than Muhammad? And Sheikh Sabi said, you get away from me. You still have not yet matured to the point. right? And he said to the second man, now you repeat, La ilaha illallah, Sheikh Rasul Allah. And the man said, well, I'm not going to repeat this nonsense. If you are not any higher than Muhammad, then you ain't the right teacher for me. I'm looking for that which was beyond Muhammad. Only these mystics come and give us knowledge that is beyond that of the world religions. Hence, traditionally, they have been looked upon as being a higher source of spirituality than even the founders of these religions. And I know this comes as a shock. Comes as a shock. But we have to state the facts of the matter. Shudam Yoga, the way of meditation, is way beyond where you will go following any religion. Following just orthodox religion, you will only be able to enjoy the merits of your good actions. And once that has exhausted itself, you will have to take birth again. Paradise is not permanent. Strange, isn't it? Paradise is a state that rewards you for living a good, righteous life. And that is not to be minimized, is it? Because when you do take that birth, automatically now, you will be fit to start practicing at the level right beyond religion in that birth. You've earned that by practicing religion. So don't get high on your horses here and start looking down your nose at those who are practicing religion. I was in a church over the weekend. Did I say that right, Bilal? Church. Y'all help me out here. Lest we forget, huh? And I saw a sister. I was sitting there to meet one of their bishops, and they had some service going on. And so I was sitting quietly, just really enjoying myself, and they were in prayer. And there was this one sister, and I don't know how to explain that. The only other time I can recall having had such an experience was with my daughter. And I'm listening to this woman pray. And she's on her knees. And it's not like us. We pray, standing straight up, and her body was in a posture of prayer. She was submitted. And she's praying, and I'm hearing this, you see. And I said that the only thing in my experience that reminds me of what happened to me sitting in that beautiful church of theirs was something similar to what happened to me sitting in Cook County Hospital many, many years ago with my first daughter, who, being an infant at that time, had became ill, and my wife roused me in the midst of the night to go with her to the Cook County Hospital. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yes. Right? And of course, I grumbled like any good husband would do. Nothing wrong with the girl. She's not really that sick. Can't just wait till, that. But no mother listened to such a foolish man. Thank God, half of us will be dead. Right? So my wife's mother love dominated my rational explanation why we should wait. And I found myself sitting out in Cook County Hospital at 4 o'clock in the morning. And my wife disappeared into the offices of one of the doctors. So I'm sitting there, hoping to hurry to get out of here, and the told it wasn't nothing. And I suddenly, my whole train of thought is interrupted by this cry. And it was a cry that I knew. It was my daughter cried in pain. Apparently the doctor had given her a shot. And this cry in this pain, as the sound of her scream hit my ear, the pain fused my whole body. And before I knew it, I was almost choking this doctor, talking about, man, what are you doing? I will kill you up in here if you hurt this child. You understand? And I rebuked my wife. I said, woman, are you crazy? You don't hurt her. It's my child. I'll hurt you. I'll tear somebody up in here. And I had to calm myself down because, it was the first time I encountered my fatherhood. You know, I didn't know what fatherhood is not just making a baby. That's a spiritual experience, right? So sitting in that beautiful church, and I heard this woman crying to the Lord, "Move in, Lord, move in. Have it your way, Lord, have it your way." In the mighty name of Jesus, Lord, stir it up, stir it up. And something in me, I started moving toward this woman because this woman had to be comforted. If I heard it, I know God heard it. I don't care about her Bible, her Jesus. This woman's heart was wailing. And you sisters know how pretty it is when y'all get into that stuff, and that's why it's so important for women to stay in the vanguard of spirituality. Because you all bring a beauty to it. Men, we're so dry and total intellectual. But this sister, you know, praying, tears flowing, mucus running, singing and crying at the same time. Only a woman can do that, right? And this thing just pierced me. It just tore me up, right? So this woman, even if she only goes to paradise for 10 minutes and come back to this world, don't you know the Lord is going to see to it that this woman comes onto this highway with no mistake. She's sincere. And it's the same inside of mosque, right? And you see the devout Muslim doing salat. It looks very different from that Muslim who's just going through the actions, you see. The point I want you to understand is that all sincere movement toward God is rewarded. And the ultimate reward is what? That you will meet a living master. And so, how many of us wish you could have been with Jesus? Wouldn't that have been better than having to depend on the Bible and the pastor's interpretation? Wouldn't you rather have sat at the feet of Jesus? Wouldn't you like that? Then think about it. When you were pulled toward Christianity, wasn't some in your heart saying, "Boy, I wish I could have sat at the feet of Jesus"? Wasn't there something in you that said that? Yes. Keep that alive, because one day he will sit you at the feet of Jesus. If there was something in you that wanted to be amongst the Imam of the Prophet, peace be upon him, you see, sitting there in Medina, reciting the infinite beauty of the Quran. If there was something in you that wanted to be there with the Prophet, you see, that drew you to Islam, keep that alive. And you will have a chance in some birth to sit with him. And the same is the case with Abraham, in the case with Moses, in the case with God. And when the Lord bequeaths his greatest grace upon us, it puts us in the company of one of these rabbis. And then they will teach us this thing that I have called Siddhartha. So meditation then is the highest practice of religion possible. There is no practice of religion higher than that. All other practices of religion is an approximation. It's en route toward meditation. Because meditation requires things from you that only those true lovers of the Lord are prepared to pray. The price that meditation requires is beyond the capacity of those who seeking toward God is still not fully right. So meditation is the supreme form of devotion in the real sense, because meditation means you're holding your mind on God and God alone. You're not thinking about your mama, you're not thinking about your husband, you're not thinking about your daddy, you're not thinking about your family, you're not thinking about nothing but you, Lord. You, just you. There is no more me. There is no more I. Even when we say, "I love you," now this is not pure because there's still I. Get rid of this I, just you. Your attention should be so focused on God you don't even know you around. Perfect devotion. And only meditation takes you there. Meditation is about disciplining the mind in that form. So meditation is a great thing. But you need to understand, brothers and sisters, that if you're going to move toward the path of meditation, you need to understand what you're going to have to bring to it. Right? And if you have not had practice following religion, then you're really going to have a hard time here. You see? Religion and the practice of religion is a great preparation. It is a great training. And it can only act as an aid to help you on this path. So, I want you to bear all of these things in mind whenever we talk about religion. I want us to develop a new respect for religion. For all religion. And I don't care how phony that sister looks to you faking her Holy Ghost attack. Never mind. Don't mind your business. We don't care if it's phony. That's good enough. It's a start. All right, we'll take that. Even your phony devotion the Lord will accept. You don't understand this thing. It's devotion. Yes, immature. Yes, it's immature. But it's devotion. You have to understand when your little son draws that picture of scribble scrabble and bring it to you. You can't even make head or tail out of what it is. Where you put it at? You put it on that refrigerator. You say, baby, that's pretty. Because you're seeing the intent behind the scribble scrabble. Right? It's like that. So even your insincere devotion to the Lord, even that the Lord accepts. So don't worry about that. You see. That will grow. And when it grows to a high degree of maturity, now you're ready for this thing called meditation. Now you're ready for spiritual yoke. Now you're ready for the path of the masters. You see. We talked already about the chakras that make up the experience available within the physical body. And I have talked to you about the kosas, remember, the covers on our self. I talked about the cover on the outermost periphery of our being called the Anamaya kosa, the physical body, what our ancestors called the Kat, right? What the African Indian ancestors called the Anamaya kosa. I've talked to you about the fact that the whole ideal is to start withdrawing our attention back toward the center of our being, necessitating us to withdraw from each of these respective covers in the process. And as you come out of this physical body, by the time you go through the Sahasrara, you enter into your astral dimension of being. Right? And I use the illustration that the physical body, and I've already apologized for my art, so you're not entitled to laugh a second time. And as I said, that the physical body is contained in the astral body. It's just the reverse from what you've been thinking. You've been thinking the astral body is contained in the physical. No. The physical is the lowest. It is contained inside of the astral. And as you go through these chakras through this body, you come out of this chakra at the top of the head, the Sahasrara chakra. And that's where you pull in your attention. That's why on the path of the master, you start here, where you're already sitting, in this state of consciousness that you're already in. You simply close your eyes and shut down your preoccupation with those things going on around you. You shut your ears so that the sounds going on around you do not distract you. You make your body still. You see. What you do is you try to create solitude. I talked last time about 3 things, actually, as well as a 4th thing that serve as the foundation of all solitude. And that's sleep less, talk less, eat less, and have more solitude. if you can get these 4 components in some kind of syntax, you have the foundation of a solid. If you don't try to sleep so much, the body needs X amount of sleep. You are not to sleep, oversleep and undersleep, right in the middle. But usually we either are undersleeping or we are oversleeping. In the West, most of us oversleep. When one meditation matures, one gets by just fine off of 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Just fine. That's right. Albion said amen. Say amen. Say amen. All right. She bear witness. Right? So sometimes we have to learn how to sleep less, so that we have more time to devote toward devotion. More time to devote toward this whole thing of meditation. You see. That is a problem with a lot of us. We don't have enough time to do our devotion in the form of our meditation. You see. We try to cut some out of our sleep instead of cutting some of meaningless activity out of your life. You didn't need to watch that movie till 2 o'clock. It had no useful purpose. It really didn't. But you couldn't click that TV off to save your life because you ain't in charge of your mind. You see? And then after 1.5 hours of bad tossing and turning sleep, you now are ready to get up and do your devotion toward God. Now look at this. You come into God unrested in the worst possible condition to do some devotion. This is madness. Do you understand? It is madness. It is what we do in some sense with our whole life. Now, we live our life and we waste it in all kinds of things. And then, just at the end, we 85.5 years old. Death is 6 months away. Now we want to come to God. Now we want to worship God now. But in our youth, when the body was strong, we had no time for God. Similarly, we do that on a daily basis. You want to give God that time that is left over when you ain't got nothing else to do, when there's nothing on TV, no party to go to, no gossip to involve yourself in, no grass to cut. When you have taken care of every activity that you can think of, now you're ready to do your meditation. Look where you put God. God comes first. Maharaja used to say that if you cannot do anything but this is terms of regularity. The moment you open your eyes in the morning, go sit for meditation, care what time it is. The first act that you should do in waking up should be devotion to God. And then everything else follows. It's a very different, it's a very different attitude, you see. But if we are able, through the practice of devotion, penetrate the first kosa, the first covering on the reality of our being, and we come out of this physical body through the sahasrara, and we come into this astral body, and actually we are now ready to withdraw the attention from the astral body. We've already withdrawn it from the physical body. And then you will find there's 6 more chakras inside of the astral body. Right? Now the lowest chakra within the astral body is called Sahansdan Kalwal. You'll never hear it. When consciousness rises to this point, it generates the experience of being God, the Creator. It is a powerful experience. It is men and women who have come to this level of consciousness that has created religion. Men and women who are able to raise their consciousness to this level in the astral body are the men and women who create religions. They create Islam. They create Christianity. They create Zoroastrianism. They create Taoism. They create Buddhism. They create the various species of Hinduism. They create Zen. They create yoga systems. You see? Powerful. Powerful. But there's more. The Hindus call the next region Pa-Brahma. Brahma means God. Beyond God of the creation of the world. You have to understand that even in Genesis, you read what it said, let us create man in our image. They're talking about a multiplicity of beings creating man. All right? There is something beyond that. In the path of the masters, you begin to explore that. The next level is called Trikuti. But actually I shouldn't. What do you think, Sadaji? Should I use this cosmology or should I go to a simpler form? Because it's going to get deep. Huh? What do you think? Sadaji is my brain. What do you think, Sadaji? It's okay?
I understand.
Let me use a simple one. Let me use a simple one. Let me use a simple one. Let me put it to you like this, because you have to understand that there's all kinds of, these are like shades of that experience. Okay? Each experience is a little bit more intense. Okay? But I want to use the example of the chakras to explain these things. So here, you will find that that chakra at the top of the head of the astral body is really equivalent to what they call Trikuti. All right? I'm not even going to involve myself in much discussion about this. But when you go past this here, this is the opening that allows you to now to step into the mind. The astral body sits inside of the causal body, much like the physical body set inside of the astral body. This is called the causal body. And when you penetrate Trikuti, you enter into the pure mental regions. And I'm not going to take you much past this. We're going to work this through you first, because I want you to go through this so that you have a good overview of what the journey looks like. Okay? And once you're able to pierce through the astral body, you're now entering into the causal body, and again you'll have the same chakra system, right? The thing you bear in mind that as you penetrate finally out of the chakra at the top of the causal body, now you are entering into the pure domain of consciousness without any form. Because God says, I cannot see you. Why can't I see you? Because there's no form. Eyes can only see forms. The whole seeing faculty can only see forms. It's a very different experience. Very different experience. And then we will start moving deeper and deeper into just this stuff called consciousness. Because where you are is in the heart of that thing. And I almost need to construct for you a geometrical model, because this is only two-dimensional and I cannot adequately represent how all of these things interface with each other. So you're going to have to rely to some extent upon your imagination. But I want you to almost see a kind of telescoping relationship between these things as they move deeper and deeper into it. The point I'm trying to get across to you is this, that the level of spiritual attainment that we associate with heaven is really the beginning of the path. The level of attainment that we associate with heaven is the beginning of the path. That's where we start. So you got to get to heaven inside here to even make it to the first rung of the path. And I wanted to put that out there so that you will have at least a week to, react, because it's rather traumatic. Because religions only talk about heaven because the founders of these religions never went beyond that level of consciousness. So how could they speak about anything beyond that? There was no way. And there was almost no need to speak about anything beyond that because the bliss that is experienced at that level is so overwhelming, you cannot imagine that there's anything more than this. I mean, it's really hard to, just like you can't imagine there's anything more than this world, for the life of you can't understand. Why in the world would some mystic, some yogi want to give up this world? You can't figure that out. All this good stuff, you see, give it up? No way. Similarly, when one experiences the nature of reality at the astral level of consciousness, it is hard to believe that there's anything beyond that. It's just really hard to believe that. Everything is so much more intense, so much more beautiful. The way you even acquire knowledge is so different.